Blue makes sense.
Blue for blue, please.
Red for passion. I work for the XPRIZE Foundation. My name is Leo Camacho, excuse me, pardon me. And I do the social media and outreach and some education as well on the Google Lunar XPRIZE specifically. And my passion is, I guess, just being a nerd, really. It's space and pop culture and all that stuff that ties together. That's why we're here.
Awesome. Hi everybody, my name is Pomerantz. I work for Virgin Galactic here in Southern California. I'm Vice President of Special Projects. I've been with Virgin for just over 3 years, but before that I actually spent about 5.5 years working for the XPRIZE Foundation. So happy to be back visiting with some old friends and supporting a great organization.
Not to team up on you, by the way.
I'm Philippe Cousteau, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of EarthEcho International. We're a youth environmental education group. And I also am a special correspondent for CNN and do a lot of media work all around conservation, sustainability. And tonight I am here on behalf of Team Ocean. So we agreed ahead of time, Will and I, that we were going to have a friendly, a frenemy, a bit of a back and forth tonight. So
then we had a couple tequila shots each. We're ready to go.
It's going to be a brawl. So
I'm just here to break it up. Hopefully,
yeah, you should be in the center.
It's true.
Space. Space.
Oceans.
How about oceans in space?
Okay. Ocean.
I was encouraged by my oceans coworkers that just to remind everybody that, you know, if you can't be a marine biologist, you can always be an astronaut.
Yes, that's a good one. I'll remember that.
How many of you have been in space in the room? How many of you have seen the ocean?
Seen the ocean. Well, I've seen space too.
How many of you have been?
I thought last time I looked up,
The up and down.
See, we're already getting into it.
That's right. We're trying to keep.
We haven't even gotten any questions.
Did we get a question?
Sure. So, how did you guys learn about XPRIZE?
I go first. So I've been a space geek all my life. I always wanted to work in the industry. I found out when I was 8 that I had to wear glasses, which knocked me out of being a NASA astronaut, which was really depressing because when you're 8, that's the only job there is in the space industry. So I kind of gave up on the dream of space for many years, and it wasn't until I went to college and I got involved in a student organization that was focused on space, and I realized that it was a real industry and there were other jobs in it besides just astronaut. You could be a scientist or an engineer, or hey, you could even be a lawyer or an accountant or anything else. So I went and I got a degree in planetary sciences. I worked for NASA for a couple years, and I got actually really burned out.
The biggest challenge we face today is our addiction to fossil fuels. That's no surprise to anyone in this room. Carbon and other methane and other issues, other gases are causing a problem, but particularly carbon, particularly with the oceans, not just climate change, but ocean acidification, which is the focus of the Ocean Health Prize. And for those of you who aren't familiar as well with ocean acidification, it's a huge problem that is threatening the health of our oceans, and that's the health of people. As the oceans absorb carbon in the atmosphere, they become more acidic, and all the little critters that make shells out of calcium carbonate, like krill, pteropods, copepods, down to little tiny animals, all the way up to the coral reef systems, clams, oysters, anything that makes a shell, those shells are either, they're unable to do so because the water's too acidic, or their shells actually dissolve. So you start to, ocean acidification begins the process of basically taking out fundamental food chains in the ocean, which feed billions of people. And of the 2 to 3 billion people coming onto this planet over the next 25 to 30 years, most of them will come into this planet in poverty, coastal communities that are unable to support them as it is now, not enough protein. So climate change, carbon in particular, ocean acidification, biggest threats we face. Batteries would go a long way to solving that problem.
I just want to mention too, one of the benefits of working at XPRIZE, speaking of getting to space faster and more cost effectively, finding a more efficient way to actually measure the ocean so we can address those issues, and batteries as well, is that I get to see all of this happening every single day at work. I get to see passionate individuals like this working on it, and it's really an inspiration. So regardless of what your background is, it's inspiring and it's driving, and it's real. Like it's actually happening, and you get to experience it. And to be at events like this where you get to show people that no matter if you're Team Space or Team Ocean, there's somebody who cares and there's somebody who's working on it, and there's something that you guys can do too. So it's a unique experience.
And what do you think the next steps are? How do we get there? And more or less, what do we do next for the oceans? And what do you think those challenges will be?
I think one of the big challenges with the ocean is that it's actually harder to live in the ocean than it is to live in space. Think about the fact that we've put three people have descended to the deepest part of the ocean. It's been, what, about 12 that have landed on the moon?
Yep.
Lost count.
So I think fundamentally that we have for decades, we have had a parity issue, a balance issue in terms of investment in space exploration versus investment in ocean exploration. It's been in the news a lot lately about this Malaysian airplane, and people are consistently asking me questions, why is this thing so hard to find? And I think it's readily evident that we have satellites in Antarctica, or telescopes, that are peering back billions of years into the history of our universe, which is fascinating and wonderful. And yet we can't find an airplane that crashed into our own ocean on this planet. And the fact that oceans are absolutely fundamentally critical to all life on this planet. We've explored far less than 10% of them. Every time we go down in the deep ocean, we discover new species. We still don't understand exactly ocean acidification, how that works, and climate, and all those types of issues that are going on. And yet we spend hundreds of times more money looking up than we do looking down. So I think that at the very least, finding more balance and parity in the investment, the amount of money that we invest in oceans versus space, would go a long way.
That's here. Well, I certainly agree with the fundamental point there. I have to call some of the specifics into question. So you forgot a few important qualifiers, right? We know much more about the moon than we know about the very, very, very deepest part of the ocean floor. Obviously, we know way more about, a lot more than 12 people have been to the ocean, a lot more than 12 people have been to the ocean floor. It's not to the bottom of the Marianas Trench, understood. So yes, and on the same way, we spend a lot more money on going to space than we spend on going to the bottom of the Marianas Trench and going to the ocean floor, which we don't go to nearly enough. But in terms of exploring and exploiting and discovering the ocean, I think we probably need more parity, but I would probably say that the situation is the other way around. We're spending a ton. If you look at the money invested in the shipping industries and the fishing industries, there's a lot going into the ocean. Maybe it's not allocated in the way that we would like it to be. I don't think anyone would disagree with that in this room, at least. But we're learning about the ocean.
There's a lot of money. There's a lot of money invested in ocean-related exploitation, fisheries, and shipping. Definitely not what I had in mind when I'm talking about helping the oceans and understanding and protecting the oceans to protect us. There's no question our fisheries are collapsing.
Yeah.
We have huge sustainability issues. So there is a lot of money, but I would agree, I think with you fundamentally, that maybe the money's not going in the right place. If we want to talk about the whole amount of money that's invested in the ocean, I'm really talking about money that's invested in understanding our oceans, exploring our oceans, and protecting our oceans is far too little.
I don't disagree with that.
Play neutral, I would say that the development of robotics benefits both parties equally. So just, play the middle ground here.
So Will, let's talk about space. Why privatize space, and what excites you about space exploration in general?
Two great questions. So why privatize space? I'm a NASA fanboy. I love NASA. NASA's great. My wife works on the Mars Curiosity rover. I think it's wonderful that we have NASA out there doing the things that they do. But we also have to realize that NASA has a finite budget, and that NASA, although it's really, really good at some things, is also not very good at other things. Just not because it's not a smart organization. It's full of some of the smartest people I've ever met. But because it's a giant government bureaucracy that answers to Congress. and to the presidential administration. So this means they're neither very quick and responsive to changing things on the ground, nor are they really able to plan things out many decades, because you have a new president every 4 to 8 years, and you have a new Congress every 2 years, and they all want to do something different than what the last guy did. So we need NASA to keep doing what it is doing. There are missions that private industry would not be capable of completing and wouldn't be interested in completing even if we wanted to, like going to Pluto, like doing the Mars Curiosity rover. But where private industry is capable and is interested, I think often we're able to do things much better. So I told you I grew up, I wanted to be an astronaut. I still desperately want to go to space. I imagine from talking to some of you over a beer earlier, a lot of you in this audience would like to go to space. As of today, 543 human beings have been in space. That's if you add up every NASA astronaut, every Soviet or Russian cosmonaut, every Chinese technonaut, 543, which is still a really, really, really small number. Really small number. And it's fundamentally not NASA's job to make that number bigger by orders of magnitude. NASA makes that job bigger, or that number bigger by 2 or 5, 10 in a really good year. So we want all of us to go. You need a private company to get involved. Someone who will sell you a ticket, who won't disqualify you just because you have bad vision, who will say, hey, you know what, if you're willing to work hard, if you're willing to buy a ticket or to write a grant proposal and find your way, you can go more than once, you can go to do the mission that you want to do. So I think that's what we're doing there. And I forgot your second question.
Well, it leads into this next one. So my second question was, what excites you about space exploration, but also I'd love to know, and I'm sure we all would, if it were up to you, what would the next space-themed XPRIZE be?
That's a good question, and I have the cheating advantage of I got to think about this stuff a lot when I was at XPRIZE. I think you can make a pretty compelling case that a great next space-related XPRIZE would be to somehow get away from chemical rocket propulsion. So if you look at how rockets fly today, so whether it's Spaceship 2 or the ones down in Hawthorne that SpaceX is building, we all are flying on basically the exact same principles that took Sputnik to space in 1957. It's chemical combustion of a handful of really 4 or 5 different chemicals. It's the same ones that Yuri Gagarin used, it's the same one that Sputnik used, same one that John Glenn used. We really haven't changed it that much. And when you're flying on a chemical combustion engine, your efficiency of it there's only a limit to how good you can get. I think we're now approaching that limit with things that we're doing, with things that SpaceX is doing. I think we've gotten those engines about as good as you can get them, which means that we've gotten space access about as cheap as you can get it on that particular technology tree. I think we need someone to find the totally parallel evolution tree that has nothing to do with chemical engine, that is beaming power up through microwaves or through lasers, that is doing a space elevator, that's doing some crazy idea that we all laugh at because no one's ever done it. Because that's where XPRIZes come in handy. They take those laughable technologies that are theoretically sound but just don't look like what other people are doing, and they give people a reason to do them.
It's like our statement is, the day before something's a breakthrough, it's a crazy idea. And that's our motto.
So what would be the laughable technology that we could apply to the oceans that you think would really help us in the future? Maybe through XPRIZE.
You know, I think one of the challenges, one of the wonderful mysteries is just what exists in the deep ocean. Now, think about the fact that the sunlight zone of the ocean only descends to about 200 feet. And the twilight zone a few hundred feet beneath that. And there are thousands upon thousands of feet of pitch black dark ocean at all times of the day and night. The only habitat that we have in the ocean is Aquarius off the coast of Florida, and it's been there for a long time, and it's like a little school bus. And it's at about 40 feet or so. I've been down on it before. I think we can do a lot better than that. I think that peeling back the layers of what exists in the ocean is a goal, and I was actually talking with some of the XPRIZE folks before. I said, wouldn't it be amazing to be able to place a habitat with powerful enough lights and with tools and remote operated vehicles to really begin to peel back the layers of the Grand Canyons and the deep trenches and the explosion of life that we know exists down there. I mean, I've heard from Navy guys before that have deep ocean pingers to listen for submarines and things like that. And they've told me that they hear things every once in a while, really, really big things. and they don't know what it is. Down, I'm talking deep, deep ocean. I mean, there are whole ecosystems and life. I mean, up until the late 1970s, we thought that all life was based off of photosynthesis. We're looking out there for aliens, and they exist on our own planet. In the late 1970s, we discovered that there are creatures that live off of chemosynthesis, of chemicals. And that was the definition of life on this planet. We had to completely rewrite the books. So those kind of discoveries happen all the time, and I think that, you know, as a storyteller and as somebody that loves filmmaking and loves trying to, you know, 3 generations of helping people understand what exists on this planet, better tools to live under and explore the ocean and peel back, particularly the layers of the deep ocean, I think would capture people's imaginations and would just be some sci-fi stuff that would blow our minds.
Yeah.
So basically Atlantis, eventually, right?
Atlantis, exactly.
Atlantis XPRIZE.
Leo, let's hear about how XPRIZE is getting involved. You've heard from these thought leaders on these topics, so what can we expect from XPRIZE?
Well, actually, to the previous points, I just wanted to point out the fact that, you know, Will was saying that, you know, government is limited and you know, commercial space is the way to go, but I really want to enforce the fact that XPRIZE is trying to unite them both. It's not commercial versus government or anything like that. We're trying to, the Google Lunar XPRIZE alone has created some interesting contracts and things like that, and some partnerships that have occurred that have allowed the government to use our Google Lunar XPRIZE teams to develop some research and development. So that's really interesting. And as far as ocean goes, we're working with those industries to improve existing technologies. It's not like they're so, I mean, in some cases they might be antiquated, but a lot of times we're just trying to make it better. But if I had to choose oceans versus space, I'd just say both. It's really just a timeline. One's a little sooner than the other. But to get involved with either of them through XPRIZE, we have a number of means. Obviously, you can join the Loop membership. That's the clearest. You can visit our sites where we have more exact newsletters. We have the Ocean Explorers newsletter also through the XPRIZE.org. We have Google Lunar XPRIZE .org where we post blogs about the teams. The teams themselves post blogs. We post updates. We post all kinds of videos that just, you know, will help educate you about commercial space in general, but more specifically about our teams. We have educational programs like Moonbots, where I'm afraid everybody in this room might be aged out, but from 8 to 17, you can sign up and you can basically compete with Lego robots. Well, I don't know, maybe there's something in there. Someone's like, hey. But it's basically a kid's version of the Google Lunar XPRIZE. You can sign up for that, or get your kids involved with robotics early, so that they can make up their own minds on where they want to send the robots to the ocean, or to space. So yeah, there's a number of ways you guys can get involved, and actually you can still sign up for the Ocean Health XPRIZE. So if you have any interest or any inclination to look further into this, please go to the website, check it out for yourselves, sign up, and get involved.
Great, so before we turn it over to the audience, I just really quick wanted to ask, what are 3 things that everyone in this room can do every single day to have a positive impact on our oceans?
So, what are 3 things everybody can do to have a positive impact on the ocean? Exercise your democratic right to vote, and stop voting these knuckleheads into Congress who think conservation is some lefty agenda. It's something that's a fundamental right for all of us: clean air, clean water. In my opinion, think about the food that you eat. Food has a huge impact on the status of the environment, the health of the environment, and then also think about how you get around and how you transport and ways to cut your carbon.
Great. All right. So let's turn it over to you guys. We'd love to hear from you to ask some of these geniuses your questions. We have a microphone right over here.
Thank you. You know, I love the ocean and I love space, but I also believe that we have a world within us, a microbiological world within us. We have a microbiological, incredible world beneath our feet in the soil. We barely know the mushroom kingdom, for heaven's sake. There's so much that we do not know that is within us and just beneath us. Is the XPRIZE ever going to take the opportunity to explore those avenues of study?
Well, I mean, there's always a number of XPRIZes in the works, and that is definitely something that I'm sure XPRIZE, if they have not already looked into, will look into. I know that we currently have the Nokia Sensing Challenge and the Qualcomm Tricorder XPRIZE, which are ways of diagnosing yourself with different kinds of illnesses and diseases. So that's a start, creating handheld technology that will allow us to more effectively diagnose ourselves and understand ourselves in a way that's accessible to everybody instantly. So we are definitely taking the steps in that direction.
When you said Mushroom Kingdom, all I could think about was Super Mario Brothers.
I was right there with you.
It's like, I know, we gotta save Princess Peach.
This is XPRIZE. This is XPRIZE.
This is a question for XPRIZE. I mean, you know, I'm a big believer that the future of human evolution is all sort of, you know, spiritual science, and in some sense the universe and God itself is the most mathematical, scientific thing there is. And I know it's not a belief system, and it's something XPRIZE has probably purposely stayed away from. But going forward, I think that's where some of the biggest breakthroughs are. And is there ever any talk about sort of crossing that line and sort of taking it out of what we see versus into what we don't see yet, but sort of in the human evolution, you know, cosmic computer side of it? If that makes sense.
My question is for Will, actually. In the time that you were there, did you ever see anything? I mean, it's certainly possible. Unfortunately, I'm not the one who develops the XPRIZes, but I know that we do look at community ideas very, very often, and we listen to a lot of different strokes from different folks. So.
Yeah, I'm not aware of anything like that having been looked at in the past, but I do know that XPRIZE very much has a show me kind of a position. So if it's out there and it can be done, open to it. Because as Leo said, XPRIZE is explicitly meant to attract ideas outside of the mainstream. Ideas that the experts are going to tell you they're impossible.
And that are concrete and measurable immediately. Because they're looking for quick results, and that's much more philosophical in nature.
Now, of course, sometimes the experts are right, but the prizes is designed to help you weed yourself out. If your technologies work, if your idea really works, who cares if anyone thought it was going to work yesterday? We care if it worked today.
Hello. A question concerning the oceans. It occurs to me that one of the greatest gifts would be successful desalination worldwide. How close are we to actually effectively, economically, sustainably, and consistently providing this kind of fresh water and changing the dynamic of how water and the future of water politics might happen?
Desal is, you know, certainly the technology exists today, but you bring up one of the big clinchers is energy. It's quite energy intensive and also provides some challenges around the local habitats of discharge of hot water instead of highly hypersalinated water. I think that more to your second point though, there's enough water in many cases. There's enough water in India for all the people that live in India. There's enough water in the United States right now. So, more importantly than desal is doing a better job of taking care of the water that we have now. When I drive, you know, I have 2 words for you: Las Vegas. When we have golf courses watering their lawns in the middle of the day, we have huge swimming pools at 120-degree heat, diverting from the Colorado River. That's pure insanity. Rice paddies in the desert. So, you know, I think that it's more to your second point about politics and the geopolitics of water. We have to do a much better job of managing that. And I think desal, which already exists, especially in the Middle East and places like that, is a salve, but won't solve that fundamental problem. We just need to think differently about water to begin with, and value it differently as a people, as a community, as a country.
So, sorry, I'm an engineer worked in the aerospace industry for 10 years, span, but also a triathlete who's been swimming in the ocean and likes to eat fish. And I've organized meetups and seen hundreds of straws floating into the ocean and try to clean them up. What about the very obvious thing of removing plastics from our oceans or working on things like that?
So a quick scary statistic about plastic in the ocean. We think there's about 200 million tons of plastic in the ocean. Now, to put that into context, there's only 600 million stuff of biomass, of living things in the ocean. All right? 200 million tons of plastic, only 600 million tons of animals at any one time. That's super scary. Now, I'll say one thing that's even scarier. We can only account for 70 to 90 million tons of plastic at any one time. Where do the other 110 to 130 million tons go? The only place we can think of is into the animals in the ocean. Animals that a lot of us eat. So plastics is a huge problem. Huge problem. I would love to see an effective technology to be able to remove that at volume and scale. That's the hard part. We have technologies that pull plastic out of the ocean. We're talking scale here. 70% of this planet is ocean. And there's something like 20 to 30,000 pieces of plastic on average in every square kilometer of ocean. So we're not just talking the gyres, we're talking every square kilometer of ocean from the top on down. I don't know how that's gonna happen. The key though is we've gotta stop putting so much plastic in the ocean. We've gotta stop being total knuckleheads about how we use plastic, from the bottles to the plastic bags. I mean, I was at a pharmacy the other week. Somebody in front of me was buying a box of Tylenol, and the woman puts it in a plastic bag. And he goes, oh, I don't need a plastic bag, a big plastic bag. So she goes, oh, okay, pulls it out of the plastic, and takes a little baby plastic bag, and puts the Tylenol on the little baby plastic bags, and hands it to the guy. I mean, it's idiocy how we're using plastic. Plastic has a lot of good uses, but so yes, plastic is a huge problem that's affecting all of us, because the endocrine disruptors, the hormone disruptors, all the things that plastic does and absorb PCBs and dioxins that go into the fish, and then if we eat the fish, it goes right into us, is very, very scary, and one of the big challenges we face with oceans right now.
And I do know that historically that's specifically an area that XPRIZE has looked at doing a prize for ocean plastic cleanup.
And just an anecdote on that is we had an oil cleanup prize, and one of the teams originally was aiming to address that issue and converted their technology to clean up oil spills instead. So there are people out there associated with XPRIZE working on that.
So Jacques Cousteau, Sir David Attenborough, Aquaman, Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Greene, Buzz Lightyear. So this is a very lighthearted question, obviously.
Are all in a fight.
Yes, yes.
Who wins? I was waiting for it. Who wins? I'm my grandfather, I said. I put my money on my
I was
grandfather.
actually going to ask you if you're related to him.
Jacques is my grandfather.
In terms of finding a passionate voice to bring to your industries in terms of oceanography, space, and all that, who would you pick to represent the message that you're trying to pass down to the younger generation so that they carry the torch? It's like, you know, we have to stimulate the minds of the 8-year-olds so that they can want to grow up and do something about the ocean, want to grow up and do something new with space. You know, is there music involved? I'm thinking about Schoolhouse Rock, how it taught multiplication tables to generations of people. Do you see any of that at all? Is that part of like the bigger picture for you? Like, how do you pass the torch?
Moonbots.
I know it's a big issue for XPRIZE. I run a nonprofit called EarthEcho International. We're one of the leading youth environmental education groups in the country. And the reason I founded that is because growing up with my grandfather, he was always telling me about young people. They're the key. They're the only ones who can change the world, and the only ones who ever do. And so actually I was at XPRIZE today in a meeting with them about the education work that we do and the partnerships we have with distribution across the country and the books and various different things that I've done. And the terrific content, not just oceans, but all the terrific science-based content that XPRIZE has about really bringing that education content to schools and classes across the country. So yes, absolutely, that's what I dedicate a big chunk of my life to, is the education strategy and how do we bring this and get kids excited about science and about exploring the world and getting engaged in their communities. Because I've seen kids pass laws, raise millions of dollars, do amazing campaigns in straws, banning straws across the country. I mean, amazing things. So absolutely 100%. Kids are the key to solving these problems, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally agree as well. Outside of work, I'm a trustee for the largest student space organization in the world. And I think it's a key time and a really interesting time for students who are interested in aerospace. You know, for about 15 years in the aerospace industry, we've all been tearing our hair out and worrying about this problem that the aerospace workforce is really, really old. They're like all, median age is about retirement age. And everyone's been saying, we don't have the kids to fill the jobs coming up next. But it's been really weird because at the same time as the CEOs of all these companies and the heads of agencies have been saying that, if you go to their web pages and you look how many jobs they have for people with 0 to 5 years of experience, it's usually 0. And it's this weird disconnect between, we're all saying we don't have enough young people to hire, but we're certainly not willing to hire any young people. The way that we're breaking that now is because space is getting cheap enough that you can just do it yourself. And you don't need NASA or Boeing or Lockheed Martin to hire you because you can do that Kickstarter campaign, and for literally tens of thousands of dollars, you can build a satellite that's about this big with parts that you pulled out of your iPhone 5S, or more importantly, your Android phone, because we're here. And people are literally doing that. People took Android-powered cell phones and have flown them in space, and with about a couple $1,000s worth of modifications, they work. And so now those students can get that experience. And when they are doing it themselves, not just studying how other people are doing it, they both do a better job. I'm happier to hire them. They get more excited about it, and more of them stay in our industry instead of going to develop WhatsApp or whatever else.
And you might be interested in Vsauce 2, which is on YouTube. It's dedicated to science and technology. The Vsauce channels, there are 3 of them. We have over 11 million subscribers, over 1 billion combined views, all based on hyper-curiosity and science. And mostly kids are watching, so we're trying.
Hi. In terms of the possibility of not just space exploration, but populating the moon or other planets, Mars, how do you respond to the argument that since it seems our species hasn't done a very good job as stewards of this planet, maybe we have no right or don't belong doing that? Or another way to phrase it is, can we populate other worlds without ruining them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the answer is absolutely yes, we can, but only if we're vigilant about it. If we're not paying attention to it, we'll go and screw other things up just like we've screwed this one up. Now granted, there's a lot of things out there, so maybe we have some ability to make a few mistakes, as long as they're well-intentioned mistakes that are designed to get us better along the way. Now, one of the nice things, one of the reasons that's less of an issue in space than it is in a lot of other industries is in space, you're paying so much for everything you bring along with it that you have to recycle everything. Every drop of water on the International Space Station has gone through those astronauts so many times you don't even really want to think about it. It's kind of every piece of plastic, you're not just chucking it out because it cost you $10,000 to bring that piece of plastic, and it's going to cost you $10,000 to bring the next one. So you figure out how to reuse it. And that's why I think we're again at this kind of exponential growth area for space, because you're getting things like additive manufacturing. And you're taking lessons that we're learning from the oceans and from other terrestrial industries, and they're all starting to merge together. So we have to think about it carefully in the nearest term with things like space debris, in the farther out terms, things like planetary protection. If we're going to places that have water, if we go to one of these oceans in space, and we're now finding out there are oceans in space, it's a pretty new thing for us and it's so awesome. If we go and we bring our own little microbes with us, it totally changes the science that we can do there. It totally changes the exploration we're going to do there. So we need to be very careful, and we are, I think.
Do we have one more time for one last question?
Yeah, let's.
This is for both of you, either for the ocean or for space. What do you feel is the key, either economic or social benefit and or fear that will drive a drastic change in how things are being approached now?
Fear? Well, unfortunately, today, talking about terrestrial and certainly ocean, but the thing about oceans is that it affects our climate, and it affects the land, and it affects the whole system. I think one of the big fears that we're starting to see is conflict driven by water scarcity, resource scarcity, lack of food, and that's only going to get worse. Put it in context to you historically, 2,000 years ago, there were 200 to 300 million people on this planet. When my grandfather was born in 1910, there were under 2 billion people on this planet. Today there are 7. Just under 100 years later, by the middle of the century, there'll be 10. So humanity is having to deal with a problem that we have never had to deal with before. We've had conflict, and we've had famine, and we've had, extreme weather for millennia. But this concentration of people, today the World Wildlife Fund estimates we consume 1.5 times the amount of resources the planet can renew every year. It's like a farmer eating its seed. The conflict that is already happening in places like the Middle East and in Africa and Southeast Asia and Latin America and to some degrees here in the United States is only going to get worse. There will be more wars, more fighting, and more suffering. And that's, unfortunately, I think in some cases, the type of disasters that are going to precipitate, hopefully, people, especially in this country, realizing this is not a political issue. This is a fundamental issue of rights of humans, and recognizing that we need to treat the Earth like the International Space Station.
Yeah.
One of the wonderful things about Homo sapiens is that we're a very diverse species. Every single one of us is motivated by very different things, and I think that's beautiful. Some of us do what we do in life because we're afraid and we're trying to address a fear. Some of us do what we do because we see an opportunity and we want to go and approach that opportunity. The great thing about oceans and space, and we talk facetiously about oceans versus space, obviously the answer is both. The great thing is both oceans and space have a ton of things to be afraid of, a lot of things that could go wrong, and a ton of opportunity, a lot of wonderful new things we could learn, new things we can experience. I think there won't be the one thing. I hope there isn't the one thing that motivates us to do more in space. Because if it is the one thing, it's going to be one of the bad ones. It's going to be, we see the asteroid coming and it's going to do to us what it did to the dinosaurs. I really hope that doesn't happen. I hope it's that everyone in this room decides they have a different reason they want to go to space. And some of you it's to prevent that asteroid, and some of you it's to go and mine that asteroid, and some of you it's to go to make the best damn ballet that's ever been done because it's in zero gravity. If we're all doing it for different reasons, then it happens the most quickly and most effectively.